All right, here we are, Mike. It's Tuesday. It's 1 o'clock. That means only one thing.
It's Gator time, right?
It's Gator time. We love doing these shows. We love doing the education. We wish we could do it in person. You know, we try to do our best here and deliver the best training we can, but COVID has its restrictions.
Well, can't get everywhere all at once anyway. We're not Santa Claus, right?
Yeah.
Not magic. So we love to train. We love to teach you guys about our products, about things in the industry, make sure that all your projects are successful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we put together a great program. You put in a lot of nice little tools, as always, to help create some interest, a little bit of energy, but more importantly, to educate. So we're excited to deliver today.
Well, what's this all about, this swipe right business?
Swipe right. Yeah, a little spit off of your favorite website, Tinder, where you can choose your right partner. Now you got to choose the right joint material.
I'm more often on HomeDepot.com or something.
Right.
I think our coworker Lou is on Tinder a lot, though.
Yeah. Well, look, we know there's a lot of joint materials out there. There's a lot of products that you can use, and choosing the right material for those joints is important, and that's important to have the right install.
Right. Some products are better suited to certain installs, and some products are just better overall for your projects to last a long time, be maintenance free. So we want you to use the right joint material and have a successful install.
Yeah, so we'll give you a nice summary and go into some demos about why products are better and some of the limitations of other products. But we're going to have some fun with it and hopefully educate you. And then most importantly, we've got great resources here that we'll show you along the way so you can follow up. Today's program will be about a half hour or so. We'll move quickly, but then there's great resources for them in the future.
Right. And speaking of fun, we have some prizes we're giving away this show season, right?
We've got some really cool stuff this year. I think you outdid it again, Mike. If we could pull those up on the screen, Mayank, we'll show you what we've got here, Mike.
Right. So we went all out this year. We've got some great stuff for you guys. We've got the 52-quart Arctic cooler, solo stove, all stainless steel, smokeless fire pit, some Yeti mugs, and a Bose speaker, all branded Alliance.
Yeah, some really cool stuff, some high-quality products. So how do we go ahead and get registered for that raffle?
Well, right after the show ends, you'll be sent to the raffle page. You can enter your information to sign up for our raffle, and we pull 6 winners every week.
All right, good. So we can come back to the Demio platform here. A little housekeeping before we get started with the program. There's a chat room button there, and I see a lot of chats. We see people from Texas and Canada all over. So we've got a lot of cool stuff to bring to you. Use that Demio feature. We love questions. We've got Topher. We've got Ryan. Keeping an eye on the questions here. We'll make sure that we get those questions answered either as we come out to you live today, or we'll follow up with a rep to get you those questions. And Mike, best viewing option is always full screen.
Right. Go full screen in that top corner there. You don't necessarily need to see us full screen, but the demos will be best viewed full screen.
Yeah, and maybe cut back to half screen when we're back on. So, all right, so let's get started with the program. Joint materials. We all follow this whole industry for many, many years, interlocking concrete pavement systems. We need something to fill those joints. So what's the history there?
Right. Well, that's the whole idea of an interlocking concrete paver, right?
Yeah.
We have individual units, segmental units that can move a little bit, but if they move a lot, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You end up with a failed job.
Well, that's the key word of interlocking concrete pavement systems is interlock. So,
right. So what actually gives us interlock and what is interlock? I guess that's the first thing to discuss here. So we'll use these little wooden blocks as models.
Okay.
The first kind of interlock that you have is horizontal interlock.
Right.
So what is horizontal interlock? That's resistance to lateral movement, right?
Yep.
How do we get resistance to lateral movement?
Well, for us, it's edge restraint systems. We have edge restraint systems that are going to hold this interlocking system in place. That'll keep those pavers or stones from moving around in a lateral fashion.
Right, and then you've got the friction of that setting bed material underneath that's also helping to prevent lateral movement. So that's one type of interlock.
So
then
that's
we've
the
got
first kind.
Rotational interlock, right?
Yep.
So that's the tendency of this paver to want to twist or roll. So that can kind of roll pretty easily.
Pretty easily, right.
That's why we're concerned about aspect ratio with pavers. Now, it's kind of fancy talk for how thick a paver is in relation to its size, because that thickness prevents a paver from rotating.
Right. And I think that's what we're trying to demo here is when we look at a thicker paver, it's a lot harder to twist these things around than a thinner profile slab in this case than a traditional concrete interlocking concrete paver.
Right. So that's why a typical paver is 60 millimeters. You get into some larger
Yep.
sizes. Sometimes they're 80 or even 100 millimeters to improve that rotational interlock.
Right. Those big commercial projects, 80, 100 millimeters, like you're talking, that's going to resist those truck twists and things like that in a commercial setting. So,
right. So what do we have next? We have that vertical interlock.
Vertical interlock.
And
right.
How do we gain vertical interlock?
You want to create friction in between here and limit or prevent the vertical interlock and help form some sort of mechanical system in here, right?
So what about those spacer bars on the edge of the pavers? Do they provide, that vertical interlock?
No, they don't. That's there for spacing, as the name suggests.
Right.
That's not going to give you the interlock.
We need material in that joint, right?
Yeah. So we've got a couple different options. Years ago when this started, what did we use?
Some type of sand. So we swept sand in between those joints and we densely compacted it.
Yep.
And that provided a nice friction hold to prevent those pavers from moving vertically against one another. And we used an ASTM C144 sand for most projects. Maybe an ASTM C33 sand for commercial projects or larger joints.
So you get those that material in there, and it's different shapes and slightly different size pieces that form that interlocking in the joint and provide you with that vertical joint. So the material is important, and also, like you said, the compaction.
Right. If you don't densely pack it in there, it's not going to have nearly the same resistance to movement.
Right.
So we pack a joint material in there. Now we have our horizontal interlock, our rotational interlock from the size and shape of those pavers, and now our vertical interlock with that joint material.
So we've improved that whole interlocking pavement system with joint material, but there's also some limitations to just a traditional joint sand.
Right. Joint sand provides the function, but you have some kind of unintended consequences there with regular sand.
Right. So I see you've always outdone yourself with these little demos here. Let's get a tight shot on that, Mayank, with the GoPro and see what we were looking at here.
Right. So we've got our joint material here, and wow, it looks good. It fills up the joints, but ants love to burrow in sand, don't they?
They love to burrow in sand. Nothing like it for an ant. So
weeds love to grow in sand.
Yeah, so that's the limitation. You get weed growth, you get insects that will infiltrate.
What about wind?
You get a little erosion
water.
And wind, and yep, not really great. So we've improved the interlock with this system, and we've got a little better mechanical install, but we've also have a mess and weed habitat in there.
Right. So people are going to do pavers because they're nicer than poured concrete.
Right.
Unless they have weeds growing through them all over the place.
And we see quite a bit of that. Doesn't look great. So then the industry evolved from the regular joint sand, and we started using these stabilizers.
Right. So joint stabilizing sealers were the next attempt at, hey, what can we do to make this joint better?
Right.
Make it less maintenance intensive, keep that joint looking pristine longer while still providing that function of interlock, right?
Right. And I can see here, so we've got half of this box is done with a joint stabilizing sealer that we have. Happens to be our Wet Look sealer, which provides beautification and helps enhance the look of the pavers, gives the pavers better longevity. And it also has that other lasting benefit of stabilizing the joint. So I can see here, this sand here is pretty hard, pretty stable, versus just the traditional loose sand that we're looking at here.
Right. It's very hard and stable. In some ways, it's too hard.
Yeah.
Sealers and joint stabilizing sealers create a very rigid joint.
Right.
So it's hard.
Yep.
It's prone to cracking.
Prone to cracking.
And
so
it's not going to heal if it does crack.
Yeah, so there are some, nice advantages with a joint stabilizing sealer, but Mike will pull up a little bit here to emphasize some of the limitations that we have with a joint stabilizing sealer. You touched on one, it's brittle.
Right. It's very rigid, very brittle. You could also end up with a very, very thin crust. Joint stabilizing sealers obviously only stabilize as deep as that sealer penetrates when you install it. And depending on how densely packed that sand is, what the moisture content is, and how much sealer you actually apply to the surface, it could be basically a paper thin crust to maybe a quarter inch, half inch at the most.
Yep. And that will come back to that whole warranty, because that's what we're getting at here. Joint stabilizing has a limited lifespan, so you're really not going to get any kind of warranty on it.
Well, yeah, there's no warranty on a joint stabilizer sand. It's going to depend on the environment, UV light, how thick that sealer was applied. It's not self-healing.
Yep.
So once you get a crack, that's cracked. It's not
done.
going to bond back together. So really can be problematic. The other issue you have is that you want to stabilize your joints as soon as you're done a project, right? You don't want to let weeds grow and ants grow into your project.
Yep.
So the first thing we want to do is let our pavers age and breathe.
Right.
We don't want that efflorescence to get trapped underneath a sealer. We don't want to have any issues with sealing in dirt from the job site. So a few rainfalls really helps to clean up pavers, make sure they don't have efflorescence before you put sealers down.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you've got the paver to show. If we were to seal that with that efflorescence, we create a big problem.
Right. You have to have a film-forming sealer to stabilize a joint. And having a film-forming sealer means that it's a layer of plastic over the surface, a layer of plastic that doesn't allow efflorescence out. You can't clean efflorescence through it. So while you've managed to stabilize your joint, you certainly run the risk of creating a mess on top of your pavers.
Right. And some of these sealers, ours included, are what we might consider breathable, but it's like breathing through one of these N95 masks that we're wearing, right?
Right. I like to, equate it to, a plastic bag. You go to Walmart, shop supermarket, you get a plastic bag for your groceries. That plastic is technically breathable, according to the lab.
Yeah.
But if you put it over your head, you're probably not going to do too well.
Yeah. So. And we work with all the leading paver manufacturers out there, and none of them are going to tell you install your pavers and seal them right away. They always want that to breathe a little bit. Let any efflorescence, you get a little bit of minor efflorescence like this. Let it breathe out. Let it get out before you seal it. Yeah.
So unfortunately, you're not going to have great success stabilizing your joints right away on your project.
Yeah. So the joint stabilizing sealers are good, but then the industry had to evolve again.
Right. We said, hey, this is good, but there must be something better out there, right?
Yep.
And the next best thing that came along was polymeric sand.
Yeah. So I think we've got another demo here, and I think we may have lost a feed with our GoPro, but we'll make this work. So this is polymeric sand, and we've got some benefits with polymeric
this is still
sand.
Joint stabilized sealer.
You're going to show the thin crust here.
Yeah, I was going to show a thin crust.
All right. So this is going to be tricky. We lost the feed here, right, Dave? All right. So if we get Lou to get a nice tight shot here, that is a joint stabilized joint.
So you can see, very thin crust, relatively brittle. Comes apart pretty easily, so rigid, brittle, not that thick.
Right.
Now we can compare that to the polymeric sand, which was the next evolution here.
Yeah, and so that comes up to well, we're getting this out here. We talked a lot about the warranty of a joint stabilizing sealer or lack thereof. You got a couple of nice little props here and demos that help you out here. So warranty was the big factor, and I think we could pull up the slide on some of the benefits of poly sand here.
Warranty comes from expected lifespan, right?
Yep.
So if you don't expect a joint stabilizing sealer to last very long, hey, we need a better option.
Yeah.
And that better option was polymeric sand. Polymers that were blended with specially calibrated sands, meeting gradation specs to provide that interlock that harden up when they are watered.
Yeah. And so that polymer is the basic ingredient in plastic, which is flexible, right? So that's, I think, one of the key benefits of polymeric sand is that flexibility.
Right. So we think of polymeric sand, it's not like a piece of rubber,
right?
But it's way more flexible than concrete or mortar. It's way more flexible than a joint stabilized sealer. It's going to deal very well with the minor movements that you get in any kind of interlocking concrete paver installation, especially a driveway.
So you get flexibility, durability, which gives you a much greater ability to, like you're saying, withstand and give you lifespan, which leads to that warranty. In our case, we put a 15-year warranty on all these products.
Right. 15 years is a long time for a product to last outdoors in the ground in a wet environment.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to withstand, rain, snow, ice, freeze thaw movements. It has some self-healing capabilities to it. If you do get any cracking, those, when they get wet, polymeric sands can rebond.
Rebond and sort of fuse together and give you that durability once again and flexibility again. Right. So nice things. And then, of course, that added benefit of some great colors.
Right.
We've got 4 beautiful colors.
Instead of just using beige sand or whatever the local aggregate material colors happen to be, you can use black sand or gray sand.
Right. And then the other benefit of these polymeric sands, G2 in particular, is the ease of use. These things are a lot easier to use than having to apply sealer and worried about the different conditions out there.
And efflorescence and
Yeah.
everything else, right?
So, and you can get it done same day.
Fast and easy. And the G2 products are the latest and greatest evolution in polymeric sands, right? Some of us have been around from the early days of polymeric sands when, hey, if you didn't do everything exactly right, you might turn your entire project white.
Right. Yeah. So G2 then gives you a shameless plug here, but a great opportunity. G2 features and benefits are great. Mike will show you what those are, but really having no dust and a clean product that doesn't require a blower. And we talk about ease of installation, but also speed of installation. It's so clean the way we've developed it that it takes only one watering, so you can really get these jobs done more quickly. And then of course that rapid set technology.
Right. So part of what we deal with is the weather all the time, right? We want a polymeric sand that's going to set up quickly and be rainproof fast. So G2 with rapid set technology is rain safe in 15 minutes. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be hard and completely set up in 15 minutes, but it's gummy and cohesive enough that your normal rainstorm isn't going to wash it out of the joints. And as it dries out, it will continue to cure.
Right. Good. So you got a couple of demos here to show and help explain what we're talking about.
So we saw how thin that crust was with the joint stabilized sealer. Now, polymeric sands also form a crust. They typically aren't hardened top to bottom. You know, these are some pieces of hardened G2 polymeric sand. And you can see that that crust is about 1.5 inches thick, give or take.
Yeah, and so that's strong,
too. 1.5 inches of very strong, very durable material. And what's really neat about polymeric sands is that they've allowed paver manufacturers to create new styles of pavers that weren't possible before polymeric sands existed.
Right, and I think the styles of pavers, the changing in the joint widths, we've gone from narrow joints and Gen 1 pavers to much wider joints now. So the polymeric sands have been much more resistant to those widening joints and give you much more durability with that.
Right, you can see here, you know, this joint's probably about 3/4 of an inch wide.
Yep.
And, you know, we do these test channels all the time that are about 3/4 of an inch wide. And the material hardens all the way through in these.
Yeah, so that's a polymeric sand in a, you know, simulated joint. That's pretty strong.
Right. So not to say it can't be broken. You know, it still can snap.
Yep.
It takes a lot of effort.
Okay.
You can break it.
And then over time, if that were in the joint, that would rebond together under the right conditions and self-heal.
Right, a little bit of moisture. Polymeric sands cycle. You know, they go from hard when they're dry to slightly softer when they're wet. They expand a little bit when they're wet. And that process of softening and expanding a little bit allows them to mesh a crack and rebond together. So that's a really cool feature that you don't get with any other joining material.
Right. And for those of you that are interested, next week we're going to do a program called Horror Stories of Polymeric Sand Installs. We'll talk about some of the challenges because they do need water, but too much and too little can create problems. So stay tuned for next week. That'll go a lot deeper into the polymeric sand topic.
Right. I'd say almost every polymeric sand problem comes from either moisture, you know, a water-related issue, or a compaction issue.
Yep. And compaction's a big thing here. We talked a little bit about it during the regular joint sand needing to be compacted, but polymeric sand is super critical to be compacted.
Both are.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just sweep regular sand in the joints and expect it to provide that interlock, and you can't just sweep polymeric sand into the joints and water it down and expect it to provide the interlock or provide a proper lifespan, right?
Yeah.
Polymeric sand is going to consolidate in that joint as you compact it.
Okay.
It's going to drop 30%, 40%, maybe even 50% of that joint height as it packs together.
Right.
You don't want to leave it loose and fluffy because that sand's going to be 30 to 50% stronger once it's compacted and activated properly.
Yeah, let's show what that really looks like visually, Mayank, with that compaction. When you sweep sand in and you run your initial compaction, that sand drops between, you say, 30 and 50%?
It depends on how wide that paver joint is, but typically it drops quite a bit. You need to sweep and add more sand to it.
Yeah.
If you never compacted, you never added more sand, you're missing half the sand that could be in that joint.
And missing half the sand, half the density means you're missing half the strength.
Right. It's not as strong, and it's not nearly as water resistant either.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that that sand is densely packed. Going to
Yeah.
give you the optimal performance from that joint for years and years to come.
Great, good. So some key tips with that. Again, we'll go through a lot more of that next week, but we wanted to really show you the real benefits of polymeric sand as a joint fill material. And now the industry's sort of evolving a bit. Speaking of materials, there's a big trend towards this hybrid chip install.
Open graded base, you know,
Yeah.
it's called all different things. In fact, it's done different ways across North America, but it is becoming more and more popular. And it presents some challenges for polymeric sands.
It really does. So we'll pull up a quick graphic to show you what that really looks like. And you can see there the chips on this. Mike is going to come join us here over with Ryan Zulo, and they're going to talk a little bit more about this chip installation, what that means, some of the pros and cons, and some of the challenges with filling it up with joint materials.
Right.
Mike?
So Ryan's joining us from Ottawa, Canada.
Hey, Mike.
Glad to have you down here at our studio.
Thank you for having me.
He's my twin.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a little bit about this hybrid base idea. So what is this hybrid base? A lot of it's come from the Ontario market, right?
Well, we started seeing this a few years ago. More and more contractors were going towards an open graded base. So basically you'd have a larger sub base with a smaller open graded bedding layer below your stone versus a sand setting bed.
So open graded stone, what do you mean by that? There's no fines, right?
Right. So you'd have, let's say, a sub base of 3/4 clear stone, and then you'd have another layer of a quarter chip stone, which would be your setting bed layer, which would also be free draining, free of fines.
Right. So that free draining is great. You don't have any moisture problems in a job as long as you provide a way for that water to get out.
Right.
It decreases the amount of efflorescence in pavers typically, right?
Yeah.
What other benefits are there?
It's a cleaner way to work. You can work a little bit longer into the season or at the beginning. You're not going to have a pile of aggregate that starts to freeze on the job sites. You can work in more wet conditions as well on the job site.
So those are all great things, but if you have an open graded material without fines directly underneath your pavers, what happens to the polymeric sand when you try to fill up the joints?
Well, if you have too big of an opening on that material, you could start to lose some of your polymeric sand down into your subgrade.
Right. So polymeric sand definitely works on these hybrid base installs or open graded bases, but you need to be aware of the material that you're actually using underneath your pavers and pay a little bit more attention to the installation process.
That's right.
We're going to walk you through a couple different materials here and kind of show you what's a good material for a hybrid base install, what's a poor material for a hybrid base install, and what you need to be aware of with the polymeric sand. So the first material we have here is a pea gravel. Let's see if we can get a close-up here. See that pea gravel there? Now, pea gravel is not a good material. Pea gravel is round, right? What do we want underneath our pavers?
We want something that's coarse and fractured and that's going to lock itself together.
Right, so we want something that's angular. We never want to see pea stone, round stone underneath our paver projects. It doesn't belong there at all. It's nice and decorative for the mulch beds or something,
right.
But never put it underneath your projects. We want nice angular material like this. So all the faces are angled. It's square, triangular, pyramidal. Those all mesh together and pack together tightly. That's the whole idea of a stone being a foundation material.
Still maybe too big for a bedding layer, Mike?
It might be. I mean, it's a little bit tougher to work with larger stone and screed it out evenly, and I think it might cause some problems for the polymeric sand.
Yeah, you're probably going to lose some more through that. Here on the end, we have, this is a number 9 stone, and this is going to be great as a bedding layer as well, as it's going to choke itself out in your subgrade, but it's going to also prevent your polymeric sand from migrating further down into your bedding layer.
Right. So let's show you what we kind of mean here. We have some polymeric sand. So why don't you pour some polymeric sand onto this pea gravel here. So you can see that it already started falling down to the bottom of our jar. That's probably not great, right? As we compact it, or as the job just kind of settles over time, where does all that polymeric sand go? It travels all the way down through that pea gravel, and now we have no polymeric sand at the top of our project, right?
That's right.
So maybe whatever crust we had with the polymeric sand is now supported by nothing.
That's right.
That's not good.
That's not what we want. Moving on to the next size, again, like Mike said, a little more tight. Well, let's pour some in there.
All right, so we need to compact our polymeric sand. We compact a little bit. You can see it works its way down a little bit, but it doesn't fall all the way to the bottom. So it's a better material, but still not ideal for polymeric sand.
That's right.
In fact, if you do the hybrid base, you need to compact until that sand chokes itself off and doesn't migrate down any further. So if you've compacted 3 times and the sand's still dropping,
keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah. Some of the tighter joints too, you think because the sand's full in the joint that it's full, but as you keep the compaction going, the sand continues to drop, and you just gotta keep passing.
And you need to keep going with that adding sand and the compaction step until it no longer drops.
That could be 6, 7 times, whatever it takes.
Right. But if you use the right setting bed material, a number 9 stone or something similar, you're going to minimize the number of times that you need to compact. You're going to minimize that settling effect. Now we're going to tap here, and you can see, compared to the other jars that we had, almost no settlement down. That chokes itself off very quickly, right?
That's right, Mike. The majority of the sand is still sitting on top of the bedding layer.
So we want to use something that's more of a number 9 stone, a 1/4 inch chip rather than a 3/8 chip, a 1/2 inch chip. That's just getting too large, and never use that pea gravel.
Exactly. Right.
The other option for these hybrid base installs would be the new Nitro, a resin-based sand, right?
Yeah, we just came out with that just last year, Mike, right?
Yep, and the Nitro, the resin-based sand, doesn't require any compaction when you install it.
No compaction to install the Nitro sand, but you do want to pre-consolidate your pavers before installing Nitro sand.
Yep, you always pre-compact your pavers. Yep. Good point.
Absolutely.
So we have some good facts and features on the air-cured resins here. Polymeric sands form a pretty thick, durable crust, right? Those joint stabilizing sealers, well, it's a thinner crust.
Right.
It's really not so robust. What does Nitro do?
So Nitro gives you strength from top to bottom. So because it's an air-cured, oxygen-cured product, once all the moisture dissipates from the joint, the material will actually set up from top to bottom, rock solid.
So that whole paver joint is going to be solid from top to bottom.
That's right.
Now, solid from top to bottom, it's pretty hard, rigid stuff, right?
It's very rigid, but it can also be brittle because there is no flexibility to it.
Right. So that's, hey, it's nice in some ways. It's solid material, but it's rigid, more like a joint stabilized joint where you can get some cracking maybe along the edge of the Nitro and your paver or stone if it happens to move. And it does not self-heal, similar to the joint stabilizing sealer. So pluses and minuses, right? It may fit some jobs, but because it's so brittle and rigid, it's not good for a driveway, right?
That's right. So as of right now, we're recommending that Nitro only be installed in pedestrian applications, no vehicular, because of how, like Mike said, it is so strong but brittle. Any sort of point load on it could cause the joint to fracture or give way under extreme load.
And it's not as durable as polymeric sand. So we have a 5-year warranty on the Gator Nitro. That compares to the 15-year warranty on Gator sands.
Absolutely.
Definitely a more durable choice, but Nitro certainly has its place. And one of those places is installing in the rain, right? How do you install polymeric sand in the rain, Ryan?
You don't.
You don't.
Mike.
You have to wait. So how do you install Nitro in the rain?
With lots of water.
You need water even if it's dry. So we'll show you an install here in a minute. Nitro can be installed in the rain, which is pretty cool.
It's fantastic. A lot of contractors in the short time we've had Nitro out in the States and in Canada have extended their season with Nitro because in those shoulder seasons, everything's soaking wet. Mike,
doesn't dry out quickly.
You just don't get that window of time.
And then, hey, you don't have to compact, right? We're going to use that water to force our material into the joints. It's a pretty cool product. I think we should probably do a little demo here for our audience. So what do we have? We've got some natural stone.
I think this is what you would call bluestone down here.
Yep, this is what we would call bluestone. So bluestone, pretty wide joint. We can do up to a 2-inch wide joint with Gator Nitro. One difference between Nitro and polymeric sand, though, is that you can't get Nitro into a really tight joint, right, Ryan?
No, and we've tried. Believe me, it's not easy. And there are some contractors trying to use consolidation equipment, and it just doesn't work out great. So
polymeric sand's great for super tight joints, great for driveways. That certainly has its advantage there. Nitro, anything 3/16 of an inch wide or larger. What's that in millimeters for our metric friends?
oh, you know what? We go by 3/16.
You go by
sometimes.
3/16 too, huh?
Yep.
So we need to have at least a 3/16 inch wide joint, maximum 2 inches for nitro. And these pails, they're pretty tough and durable too, right?
I would say this is the most robust packaging for a resin-based product in the market.
And that's important because what happens to a resin-based product if the package gets damaged?
It becomes a solid block.
A solid block that you can't use.
That's
So
right.
you're frustrated. You've got a solid chunk of unusable nitro. You got to go back to the dealer and change it out.
Yep.
We put a lot of time and effort into our packaging to make sure that it's going to arrive on the job site safe and sound and ready to use.
Absolutely, Mike.
How about those lids too? Can you give me those lids?
Yeah.
So all of our lids are color coded. I've got a couple beige and gray over there. So these different lids let you identify the product very easily. And they also have a little label on the top. And that label on the top says, for best results, install Gator Nitro to a pre-wet surface, right? What happens if you install Gator Nitro on a dry surface, Ryan?
You would run the risk of staining it.
And staining your pavers is not good. Now, you can take that stain off with a degreaser to some degree. You can lighten it up a little bit. It does go away with time, but wet the surface down and you won't have a stain to begin with.
That's right. Make it easy for yourself.
The next point on those lids is that Gator Nitro is an extremely strong and rigid joint material. Please ensure there is absolutely no stone or paver movement prior to installation to prevent joint cracking. So you got to install your pavers or your stone right.
Yeah.
Nitro is not meant to glue it in place or mortar it in place. Nitro is a joint filling material.
That's right.
And then pedestrian use only, so no vehicular traffic.
Awesome.
Before we get into this install, there is one thing I wanted to show the audience, and that's how Gator Nitro is permeable. That's pretty cool.
I think permeable is what we're looking for these days.
It is more and more, right? Polymeric sands are really impermeable. Water flows off of the surface.
That's
Gator
right.
Nitro is permeable. So that's a pretty solid chunk of nitro. That's a bowl made out of nitro, what,
Very
2
nice.
inches thick?
Looks like
Give or
it.
take. You want to hold that up for the audience here? All right. So if I pour water into it, what happens? It goes right through.
Right through. Wow. Look at that. Nothing left in here.
All right.
Amazing.
Pretty neat. So let's
Want to take a bag out, Mike?
Let's take that bag out.
All right.
You're a big, strong guy. You can lift that. All right, so we've got our nitro here. Once you slice that open, expose it to oxygen, it starts to harden up, right?
Yep, but as long as you keep it wet, you can keep using the material for as long as it stays wet.
Yep, so we're going to slice this open here, and we are going to dump some out, right?
Yep.
Wait a minute.
Oh, what did we forget, Mike?
We didn't wet the whole surface down.
Okay.
So grab that hose, and let's make sure we wet all of these pavers or stone down first so that we don't get any kind of staining.
And if it were to be raining, would you have to keep watering it, or would, if it was wet enough, be good?
All right. So we're good there. If it was raining and the pavers were all wet, you'd be good to go. If it's a
Perfect.
hot, sunny day, though,
Yep.
make sure you're adding water to the system, to the pavers,
That's
and
right.
keeping it wet as you're installing. If it dries out while you're pushing that nitro around, you might get some staining or
Exactly.
residue. So if we dump this out, we certainly don't have to dump all of it out. It's a pretty cool material. Now, what's the best way to go about installing this?
You can either use a broom or a squeegee, depending on which type of surface you're using. If you got a smooth surface, a squeegee works well. If you have a textured surface, a broom works well.
Right, and just go at it, start pushing it around.
You can start, and I can start watering at the same time.
Yeah, let's water our tools down
Keep
first.
your tools.
Helps to keep them from gumming up too badly. So we'll wet that down, and Ryan's going to add some water as I push this around.
Good idea to also wet any surfaces or walls around the area you're working in case of any splashback.
Even the side of a house.
Yep. It looks like it's getting in there pretty easily, Mike.
Well, this is a nice wide joint, right? So it's falling right in. If you had a tight joint, it might be a little bit more difficult. So that's why we recommend that 3/16 as a minimum. We're trying not to make too much of a mess here, but we'll get this stuff pushed in. All right. Here, I'll rinse off from this direction a little bit. So why don't you grab that squeegee and you can kind of
the squeegee also
pull it around a little bit.
The squeegee I like because it helps to pull the water around with the material you're installing.
The other cool thing is take a close look at that joint. As I add water to it, it's puddled up and it sucks right down. That's that permeability. So we're using a ton of water to install this. How quickly is it rainproof?
It's rainproof in a sense of once it dries out.
It's rainproof right now, right?
Well,
effectively?
Yeah, it can't be damaged because it's installed with water.
All right, so looks pretty good. Now, if we happen to have some extra material, and I kind of forgot to leave some extra material, do we have to throw that away?
No, the nice thing with nitro is that you can put it back in the bucket and add 2 inches of water over top of the sand, and it's good for about 3 or 4 weeks, Mike?
Yeah, I've seen it last even longer than that, but
Nice.
3 or 4 weeks is a pretty safe ballpark. You know, you don't have to throw it away. Use it on your next job, save it, and
Nice.
keep going. Now, how about that pointing tool?
Yeah.
The joint's pretty nice looking. I mean, that's a nice it's a rough texture, but it would certainly work for an outdoor project. But if you wanted to smooth it out, you could use a pointing tool and kind of point that almost like a mortar joint.
Give it more of a mason look.
Yeah,
Masonry look.
exactly. And then we can show you that permeability again, just kind of adding that water to it and letting it soak right in. So pretty neat product, but still has a few limitations, right? We don't want to use it for vehicular traffic. We don't want to use it in those driveway applications. It's a little bit more rigid and brittle than polymeric sand, not self-healing. But it's really taken off, right? You have a lot of guys using it.
We've seen a very quick jump on it. Guys just like to extend their seasons longer. Even during the summers, they're getting on the next job faster, right? Because there is a few steps that you're taking out, right? With the consolidation multiple times, the watering process is kind of done during the install, and you can do this essentially with 2 guys fairly quickly.
And because you don't need to compact, because of the way this stuff chemically bonds together and it's kind of sticky, it chokes off immediately in those hybrid base installs. So ideal for any pedestrian hybrid base applications.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming out and helping us, Ryan.
My pleasure, Mike. Thank you for having me.
We're going to play a quick video on the Gator Nitro real quick, and then we'll wrap things up here.
All right, Mike, that was a great demo you guys did.
Yep, that was pretty cool. Nitro is definitely the cool new product, right? But
Yep.
Nitro is not for every application. I'd say that if you were doing 10 jobs, yeah, maybe 2 are great for Nitro, but the other 8 are still probably polymeric sand.
Yeah, for sure. And now Alliance has a great product for everything. We'll show you all the different products we have here. My uncle pulled that up on the screen, but it's really depending on the application. So we've got products for every job, from natural stone to concrete pavers to tile, but it really depends on the application. And then, like you said, Nitro has some limitations.
Right. So hey, choose that best joint material. In most cases, it's going to be G2 Max.
Yeah, and that's going to give you the flexibility, the best warranty in the industry, and certainly among all the Alliance products. So that's really going to be the best product if you're looking to have a one size kind of fits all. But there really is no one size fits all.
No,
You're going to
keep
use
in
tile.
mind that we if we could make one product and that's all we had to sell,
Yep.
that would be ideal, right? Simple, easy. But there's a reason for all those different products, and a very important reason.
Right. We have a couple tools. We have a great guide, which we'll see here how to download that guide here in a sec. But we had a great guide that'll help you choose that selection. Mike will pull that up here. And really, that gives you some of the highlights of how to choose the product, right?
Right. It's a little confusing. You know, how do I know which product to use on which job? Is Nitro going to be better? Is polymeric sand going to be better? Do I need to think about one of the specialty products that's out there? If you want to have a successful job, you know, take a look at our education portal and look at those guides.
Yeah. And the best resource for you, though, hands down, is our sales team. So we've got a great group of sales professionals throughout the world, really, certainly in North America, where many of our viewers are today. You met Ryan over there. We love coming out to those jobs. Mike, you've been out to a few jobs in your life.
Yeah, I've gone to a few, and we'd love to get out on the job and talk to you about our products, teach you how to install our products. There's nothing like seeing it done from the experts, right? You know, we all watch videos to learn how to do things these days. You can watch us here in the studio. You can get out on the job site, which is even better, and do it in person and provide a little bit of free labor.
Absolutely. And all of our reps are well trained. They come through this operation here. You show them how to use the tools, the job site. Many of them, like Ryan, were former contractors, so they really know stuff. Use the reps, take advantage of them. That's the best resource we have.
Yep.
So great. Well, look, that wraps up our program for today. Don't forget, next week we'll be back Tuesday, 1 o'clock with our horror stories of polymeric sand and how to avoid those situations. So we'll be back next Tuesday. And Mike, what are we going to send them off with the prizes?
Hey, you can win that cooler, the fire pit, some Yeti mugs, Bose speaker. You know, make sure you register and tune in to see us next week. You know, learning about the right joint material is important, but learning how to avoid mistakes with joint material is also important.
Just as important, for sure. Yeah. So thank you all for joining in. We look forward to you. We appreciate your business that you give to us. Stay safe out there. If you like this program and you want some, if you're a dealer watching this program and you want to have this more customized for your staff and enjoy Mike's expertise, get in touch with that local rep. We'll set something up for you. We love doing this stuff. So stay safe out there. Register for the raffle, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.